With the many advancements in technology, CCTV, dash cams, and doorbell cameras have been among the best features. Security footage often yields helpful footage, but may also lead to some chilling videos. In 2016, an American couple from Chicago was startled to find that they were being watched by an eerie figure while they were asleep. Jack McArcher and Jordan Baranskis had fallen asleep on their sofa while watching TV and were completely unaware that they were being watched. Luckily, the CCTV footage managed to capture all that had happened. The couple explained that they had not known they were being watched until Jordan realized her purse was missing. Upon reviewing the video footage, they came to find the scene of their living room. On the side of the living room, there's a staircase leading to the second floor. Right at the top of this staircase, a person wearing a white hoodie can be seen standing there. The footage was rewinded to 3:30 on a Monday morning. Jordan expressed that she initially thought that it was Jack standing at the top of the stairs, and when she asked him about it, he said it wasn't him. That's when the couple became terrified. The intruder was able to enter the house through an unlocked door after climbing the fire escape and watched the two for a lengthy amount of time. Jordan recalled that the person was watching them for 5 minutes before walking away and then returning to watch them again for another 5 minutes. The intruder was quiet and careful enough to not awaken the two dogs that slept at Jack and Jordan's feet. After the footage was released, the burglar received the nickname the Creeper Ghost. Many believe that this individual is the thief responsible for other neighborhood break-ins. Some of the locals in the area have released photographic evidence of an individual riding a bicycle through the alleys and breaking into the houses in the Bucktown area. In an interview, Jordan explained that she and Jack had even gotten into a minor argument over whether or not she left her purse at the restaurant that they went to earlier that evening. This is what led her to have a look at the security footage. It's thought that perhaps the intruder was watching the show Mr. Robot that was playing. Jordan also stated, quote, "I like to think that he was watching the TV and not us." She furthered this by stating that this idea was a lot more comforting than the intruder watching them. Jack later explained that every other night aside from that one, the two would have been in bed with the balcony door locked. He stated, "You leave the door unlocked one time and this is what happens." He also expresses that he believes the burglar was perhaps watching some of the show, since he leaves when the credits start rolling. It's said that the total amount of time that the intruder was there had been 15 minutes, which is an incredibly long time to be watching the sleeping residents of a house after having broken in. The man then exited back the way he came, through the balcony door and down the fire escape. Luckily, the couple as well as their dogs were left unharmed, and nothing aside from the purse had been stolen. Authorities were investigating the case and did have a suspect in custody. It's explained that he'd been detained on Friday but was later released. The report states that the suspect had passed away before police arrived. He was apparently bound with duct tape. It's uncertain whether or not this was the burglar, and the entire case remains a mystery. Jack McArcher and Jordan Baranskis stated that they would be improving their home security from that point on. It must have been rather chilling to discover that someone had entered your home without you knowing and watched you for several minutes while you slept, carefully and quietly sneaking around before eventually leaving. The creeper ghost may still be wandering unsuspecting people's houses. Homeowners should be aware and lock their doors at night to ensure their safety. Jack and Jordan were lucky to have not been harmed this entire time. Surely, Jack and Jordan will be locking their balcony door and all their other doors from this point forward. We can only hope that the creepy individual has been apprehended in relation to other crimes. The couple will definitely be adding more security to their house to ensure their safety. Rainey Schuler is a YouTuber who uploads videos of his traveling adventures, as well as a variety of other footage, such as that of his yard security camera. Often, Schuler reposts videos of security footage that's captured wildlife. This security camera has captured videos of bears, deer, mountain lions, and random strange women walking around his property. Schuler's house is situated in a mountainous region, which is far away from any other roadways, and he has no immediate neighbors, which makes the footage even creepier. The security footage is dated the 14th of September 2013, and at 43 minutes past 8 in the evening. In the video, a stranger is seen making an appearance out of the thick bush and trees. The woman's arms appear folded, and she can be seen pacing around the area for several minutes. She occasionally stops to look around, appearing confused and maintaining the same pose throughout. She exits off the screen for about 45 seconds before reappearing closer to the camera with her arms still folded. The intruder can be seen exiting the area again before emerging further away 10 seconds later. It takes another 16 seconds for her to re-emerge from behind some trees and appears to be just a bit off balance. She stands in the exact place for 90 seconds, as if she's waiting for someone, and moves off again. The footage changes to a different area, which looks like the outside of Rainey's house. She's seen walking towards the house but turns down the side of it and disappears into the bush for another 60 seconds, before returning and heading back in the same direction in which she came. It's uncertain what happened next, or if the woman was trying to get into the house or was lost for some reason. It remains unknown as to whether or not the authorities were contacted regarding the strange woman on the property, who appears out of nowhere and acts strangely. The viewers of the video had a lot to say as well. Some believe the woman may have been intoxicated, but she appears to be walking quite normally. One of the commenters asked if Rainey ever found out who the strange woman was, but this question was left unanswered. Others even told him that he should take this footage to the nearest police station. Although her face is not clearly visible, the authorities may be able to clear up some of this footage and identify the woman. A few of the viewers seem to believe that she's looking for something, but what could she possibly be looking for, since the house is situated a great distance away from any roads or other houses? Others seem to think that she was under the influence of some sort of drug. There is a general agreement that this was certainly out of the blue and very creepy. If the woman was lost, as some of the viewers have suggested, then why did she not go up to the house and knock on the door? Instead, she just paces around the property, even going behind the garage before returning sometime later. One of the viewers explained that at 1 minute and 10 seconds to 1 minute and 50 seconds, there are headlights that appear on one side, and there are lights that go on and off a few times. This leads people to believe that perhaps her car had broken down or crashed. It's not known what happened to the woman, or if she managed to find her way back to the roads or her vehicle. There have been no further explanations from Rainey on this particular video. She generally appears to be very confused throughout the footage and should have gotten assistance. This is why home security systems are so important. Anything could have happened throughout the course of this unsettling video. Luckily, it appears that no one was injured, but it would certainly be relieving to know exactly what went on here. An incredibly terrifying ordeal took place in 2017 at Rochelle Haig's home in Partington, Manchester. The event was something that every mother fears. This video was captured on home CCTV footage. Rochelle's children can be seen playing in the garden when a white van rolls up. Initially, the white van can be seen entering the screen at quite a speed. The driver is at a distance away, but within earshot. The man appears to be attempting to lure the 3 children to his vehicle until the oldest daughter runs to find her mother while another follows. She can be seen returning to the garden to get the youngest child to safety. It appears that the man was trying to lure the children to his car using a bag of donuts. The man was asking Rochelle if her daughters wanted the donuts, but as soon as Rochelle wanted to confront the driver, he quickly sped away. The mother took to social media and posted the footage to warn more families. She explains that the footage reveals a man who had tried to offer her children donuts and told them to come to his vehicle. She also recalled that as she was about to confront him, he began acting strangely before taking off. He looked terrified and said that he was just trying to offer the girls a donut. The Greater Manchester Police Department commented that a report was made on the 7th of October, expressing that the man had offered children donuts with the assumption that he was trying to lure them to his vehicle. But due to the lack of evidence supporting Rochelle and her daughter's claims, the case cannot progress, and it's being treated as suspicious with an ongoing investigation. Rochelle recounted in an interview that she heard a screech as if someone had done an emergency stop. She stated, quote, "I was sat on my couch and I could hear someone shouting. "Come on, quick girls, come get some donuts." That's when her daughter came hurrying in saying, "Mom, come quick." Initially, she thought it was just some friendly neighbors, until her children had conveyed that a stranger was lurking outside. The 26-year-old mother praised her oldest daughter for hurriedly getting all the children to safety and informing her immediately. She explains that she's always taught the girls to run should anything like that happen. Rochelle warned her neighbors and told them to keep a lookout. The authorities have also stated that inquiries are ongoing. On the YouTube video that was posted by IB Time UK, one person in the comment section said that it was sad that the children waved at the man, not knowing what his intentions truly were. Another viewer expressed that they had also seen another video of the exact same van trying to lure children towards him. This suggests that this person might be going around the area trying to kidnap young children. Commenters state that they can't even see any donuts, but it was stated by the mother that he directly said to her that he was offering the children donuts. A closer eye should be kept on young children who are outside unattended. No further information has been revealed regarding this particular case. Perhaps he was apprehended sometime later relating to other incidents. This, though, remains unconfirmed, and there's no information regarding the individual, such as a number plate or their identity. The world has become more unsafe throughout the years, and it's important that everyone stays cautious and alert. Hopefully the creepy man was caught, but for now, this mystery remains unsolved. A hotel named Eagle's Nest, situated in Quincy, Illinois, was reportedly a hotspot for paranormal activity. That's possibly why it comes as no surprise that the CCTV footage was able to catch a video of a suspected ghostly event. The video shows the elevator area of the hotel, where a cart can be seen at the furthest side. A strange, ghostly figure appears as soon as the elevator doors open and dashes out into the area. It dashes very quickly and then back into the elevator. Some also think that it exhibits childlike behavior. Many believers in the paranormal believe that this is an evil ghost spirit. The reason for checking the footage in the first place was that the housekeeper realized some items had been missing from her cart. In the video, it's noted that the figure dashes toward the cart and back into the elevator, and may have taken something from the cart as a child would do. The shadowy figure can be seen for a few seconds in the video before quickly disappearing. According to staff members, this hotel has seen many paranormal events and has often reported strange things happening. Staff members claimed that they would see shadows or hear giggling noises while they worked, and explained that the giggling was disturbing and creepy. The member who's targeted most often is the man who does the maintenance. He expresses that he has really odd things happening around him while he's working and attending to issues. One person explained that the elevator doors were closed at the time, and that if they had reopened, you would see a light. The angle of the camera prevents us from seeing if the elevator really did open or not. This particular video has been seen over 20,000 times after initially being uploaded to Facebook by Jennifer Majors, who was an employee at the hotel on the 14th of May, 2020. Sometime later, the video was shared by the Hidden Underbelly 2.0, which is a paranormal YouTube channel. The creepy figure in the video has gained a lot of attention, and some believe that it's an imp or a demon of sorts. One person had commented stating that one should not be fooled and the ghost is not a child, as some believe, but rather a demon. Another viewer was rather worried after seeing the video, and said that everyone needs to be extremely careful, and if the creature is able to move items around or make noises, then it's more than likely a poltergeist. Many of those who saw the video seemed to be on the same page with another commenter, stating that's evil for sure, and another saying it just hangs around someone who's going to pass soon. It's waiting for his soul, which is one of the more disturbing comments. In the video, you're able to see the elevator doors. The staff members were asked about this, and the response was that the building is old and built in such a way that the elevator doors are installed deeper, in which it makes it appear as though there's a large doorway. According to the staff member, they've seen other buildings in Illinois with a similar structure. Although it's initially believed that the elevator doors had opened, it cannot be confirmed since the doors of the elevator can't be seen. Some of the viewers even attempted to debunk the video and stated that you could see the camera moving or wobbling in such a way that it could not be CCTV footage. The video itself was taken by a staff member of the actual CCTV footage. It's seen clearly that the video is of a screen displaying the CCTV footage. Some more comments stated that this was a demon pretending to be a child, and one suggested that there are other dimensions around us, and this is one indication of that. One viewer asked if any passings occurred at the hotel, which would be interesting information to know. A commenter explained that this is good evidence of a parallel universe that's just out of our view. Another person who saw the video intriguingly stated that there are many entities present in the video, and said that one of these entities can be seen underneath the cart. There's also supposedly a few more ghosts by the doorway, where the initial spirit enters from. Hotels appear to be a hotspot for ghostly activity, especially when there's no one around to witness it. If the ghost is as evil as the viewers say, then perhaps one should be careful when residing at this hotel. Another hotel in Illinois is home to some ghostly activity. The Wingate Hotel shared a video in 2012 of some very strange footage after initially being recorded on the 14th of September in 2003. A staff member of the hotel, John, was leaving the elevator on the second floor of the hotel to head to room 209. On the screen, 4 areas of the hotel are visible. This includes the entrance, a stairwell, the pool, as well as the second floor. John was on his way to have a look at the room after there'd been a report made by a woman stating that there was screaming emanating from there, even though nobody had checked into that room. John heads down the hall, making his way to the room. Upon reaching the room, John expresses that he can still hear the screaming. He was speaking to another associate over a radio call, and they stated that he should hold off while they get a hold of the authorities. John enters the room anyway, just to have a look to see if anyone was in any danger. He can be seen walking into the room with a flashlight and disappearing out of view. After entering the room, a ghostly figure can be seen coming out of it and carrying on down the hallway. The apparition appears as a white fog in the shape of a man. The light next to the door also flickers slightly twice. Soon, John can be seen returning and appears to be somewhat startled. It's stated that John now requested for the authorities to get there. He had said that there was no one inside the room, but all the furniture had been turned upside down and it was a mess. He further explained that the carpet was ripped up and the shower had been turned on. He walked away from the room, leaving the door open, and the man on the radio can be heard saying that he was incredibly freaked out after all that. On the 19th of May, 2021, the video was uploaded to TikTok by a user named Slowmo, which has been replayed 2 million times in 24 hours. The video was initially given to a YouTuber named JimmyNut22 by the security of the hotel and has been viewed over 9 million times since making its way onto YouTube. Additionally, there was an update posted in the video description stating that he's not legally allowed to say where the hotel is located and that viewers should stop asking. Some believe that the video is fake, especially with the addition of the horrific screams. The exact location of the hotel has been kept a secret due to certain unspecified events that occurred there. Some have tried to debunk the video, but found it rather difficult since it all seems very real. Everyone is uncertain what to make of the video, but it is certainly a very haunting experience. John also doesn't appear to notice the figure leaving the room, and he appears genuinely frightened and even hesitant. It would definitely prove difficult to edit a video in such a way that shows a ghostly figure turning a corner and continuing down the hall without making it look robotic. The scary video became known as the Screaming Ghost at Wingate Hotel. Recently, the video has been trending on TikTok, where viewers asked if they could stay at the hotel in room 209. In the comments of the TikTok video, one person stated that if a crime had occurred in that room, then John just let the spirit out. Another commenter agreed with them and said that the ghost appeared to be running away and was most likely the spirit of a woman. This commenter also claimed to have seen similar events before. Some believe that this was a staged act by the staff members of the hotel, but some paranormal believers highly disagree. While some viewers are skeptical about there being a camera right outside the specific room, it's noted that many cameras follow John throughout his journey toward the room. This security footage is definitely disturbing, and the events that took place in that room remain unknown. Staff from the hotel were unable to identify who was screaming, and it's uncertain if the authorities did attend the hotel. Later, it came out that the video was a hoax, but this may also be a cover-up of sorts, since no further information has been revealed. Perhaps the acts that occurred in room 209 that evening were far too terrifying to share with the public. Hotels can be a scary place, and everyone should take caution while staying at one. Kidnapping is a serious and terrifying crime that leaves the victims traumatized for months, and in some cases years after the fact if they're lucky enough to survive their ordeal and return home safely. It's hard to imagine that someone would put their family and loved ones through the torment of thinking that they may have been kidnapped, only to reveal later that the entire thing was a hoax, but sadly it happens more often than you might think. On the 2nd of November 2016, 34-year-old Sherry Papini was reported as a missing person by her husband Keith after he returned home from his job and could find no trace of her. 22 days later, on the 24th of November, Papini was dropped off about 145 miles from her home with injuries that told of her abduction. She would then claim that 2 Hispanic women had held her captive, but she couldn't identify them since they'd been wearing masks the entire time. But it would soon come to light that the entire story had been a fabrication, and that Papini had created the hoax in order to get back together with her former boyfriend, James Reyes. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison in order to pay $300,000 in restitution for search and rescue efforts that had been undertaken. Another similar case took place in 1950 when actress Nicole Risch was abducted from a theater in Paris while she was performing in a play. She had received a note from someone calling themselves Richard Masso, who wanted to speak to her about her mother. Risch walked outside to meet with him but didn't return, and she was reported as missing. 2 days later, she reappeared, claiming to have been kidnapped by Puritans who wanted to teach her a lesson about the immoral life that she was leading. But investigators noticed that she didn't have a mark on her, and even her hair was neatly brushed, despite having been dumped in a forest. She would then confess that her kidnapping was a publicity stunt organized by Alexander Dundas, the theater's manager. In another strange case from 1930, the St. Louis Cardinals starting pitcher, Flint Rem, claimed that he'd been kidnapped prior to a 3-game series against the Brooklyn Robins. The 2 teams were vying for first place in the National League, and Rem was scheduled to start in the 2nd game, but he mysteriously vanished from the team's hotel and would only return 2 days later, avoiding all questions about where he had been. When a reporter made an off-the-cuff remark about Rem being kidnapped, he seemingly latched onto the idea and told reporters that it was indeed the case. He claimed that a group of gangsters who had placed bets against the Cardinals had taken him to a cabin in the woods where they forced him to consume copious amounts of alcohol. But Rem had a drinking problem, and so his story was taken with a grain of salt, and he would only confess to his lie 21 years later at a team reunion. In a more recent case, a 25-year-old nursing student from Hoover, Alabama, made a strange 911 call on the 13th of July, 2023, after which she mysteriously disappeared. In the call, Carly Russell told the dispatcher that she'd been driving along Interstate 459 when she noticed a toddler by the side of the road. She then said that she was pulling her car over to see if the child was okay, and while doing so, she phoned her brother's girlfriend, who would later tell police officers that she'd heard Carly screaming before hearing the sound of her phone falling to the ground. Police raced to the scene, but they were seemingly too late, as Carly's car was found unattended, with her phone and wig lying a short distance away. Inside the car, they found her wallet, Apple Watch, and food that she had purchased before heading home. Investigators checked the surrounding surveillance cameras and were able to see Carly pulling over by the side of the highway. In the grainy footage, which was released while the search for Carly was still going, her car's hazard lights could be seen blinking as she pulls over. She then steps out of the vehicle and walks a short distance down the road, but due to the poor quality footage, it's unclear what happens next. A short time later, a police vehicle can be seen arriving with its lights flashing. Upon analyzing the footage, investigators stated that Carly had left her place of work in Birmingham's Summit Mall at around 8:20 p.m., after which she drove to the Colonnade Mall to pick up dinner. They were certain that she was not being followed while she drove, but found it strange that no one else spotted the toddler by the side of the road, since there was a lot of traffic on the highway at the time. Carly's disappearance soon made headlines across the US, and people waited with bated breath to hear whether she'd been found. But they didn't have to wait long, as she reappeared unharmed at her home 2 days later, on the 15th of July. When questioned about her ordeal, she told investigators that a man with orange hair had suddenly appeared from the trees by the side of the highway as she walked down the road to check on the toddler that she reported seeing. She added that he grabbed her before forcing her into a tractor trailer and placing a blindfold over her eyes. He then drove her to a house where he forced her to remove her clothing. Luckily, she managed to find a way to escape the next day, but she had to traverse through a wooded area before emerging close to her house. But not everything about Carly's story added up. When her internet search history was checked by investigators, it was found that before her abduction, she had searched for the movie Taken, in which a man's daughter is kidnapped. They also found that she had conducted searches during her absence relating to Amber Alerts and the price of local bus tickets. They added that they found other concerning search items that she had used, but declined to release any details out of respect for Carly's privacy. Furthermore, they found that during the time that she was following the toddler in her car, she had traveled as much as 600 feet, and investigators knew that a toddler couldn't possibly travel that distance in such a short amount of time. With so many questions left unanswered and cracks beginning to show in her story, Carly would eventually admit that she had staged the kidnapping, though it's still uncertain what her motives were for doing so. She was charged with 2 misdemeanors for making the confession, including falsely reporting an incident and falsely reporting to law enforcement officers. Many people were outraged by the charges, as they felt they were too lenient. Her bond was set at $1,000 for each charge, and at the time she faced a possible 12 months behind bars, but she was released after posting her bond. Carly made sure to mention that she acted alone, and that none of her family members were involved in the hoax. It's often hard for investigators to follow up on a missing person case involving a homeless person, since they may simply have decided to move to an alternate area, or they could be living in a Good Samaritan's home for a while. In many of these cases, they aren't even aware that they've been reported as missing until they re-emerge later to find that people in the surrounding area had been searching for them while they were gone. Sadly, this isn't always the case, as many homeless people who have gone missing in the past have never been found, and their fates remain undetermined. Due to their nomadic lifestyle, these cases remain open for years and sometimes decades without ever reaching a conclusion. There are also some cases where a missing person simply doesn't want to be found, either because they had a falling out with someone close to them, because they feel more comfortable away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life, or because they're suffering from mental health issues, which was the case when a 26-year-old doctor named Carlos Sanchez Ortiz de Salazar went missing in Spain in 1995. The search for de Salazar yielded no results for as much as 2 decades, and his family had given up hope that he would be found alive. He was officially declared deceased in 2010, and the case was brought to a close. Or so everyone thought, until 2 mushroom pickers made a startling discovery in Italy 5 years later. While out foraging in the woods, they stumbled across a man living in the woods, and when they spoke to him, he produced his passport to reveal that he was de Salazar. To their surprise, he told them that he'd been living in the woods for 20 years after falling into a deep depression and deciding to move to Tuscany, where he started living the life of a hermit out in the wild. They immediately contacted an Italian missing person charity called Penelope, and they managed to find de Salazar's family. Members of his family traveled to Italy to find him, but when they reached his spot in the woods, he had decided to move to a new area, and his current whereabouts are unknown, but his family has stated that they're relieved to know that he is alive. This is, however, not the case in the mysterious disappearance of Christopher Orcutt from Alaska. At the time, Christopher was homeless, and since he was not in the habit of keeping in touch with his family, he wasn't reported missing for several days. On the 25th of August, 2016, Christopher attended a party in a house on Thane Road. The house is situated above a store in the area, and while there, he consumed alcohol to the point where he became very intoxicated. He then left the house later that night, but due to his condition, he accidentally left several pieces of his clothing and cell phone behind. The owner of the house kept Christopher's possession at the house, but when he hadn't returned to get them nearly a week later, she contacted the police to report that his belongings were in her possession. When Christopher was nowhere to be found, a missing person case was opened, and the investigation into his disappearance began. Investigators soon learned that Christopher was last seen at a restaurant called Tracy's King Crab Shack, which is situated in the 400 block of South Franklin Street. A staff member told the police that they'd had a conversation with Christopher while they were taking out the trash, but that they didn't know where he went from there. After learning of his disappearance, Christopher's mother, Dawn Rasmussen, and his sister, Liddy Marie Armstrong, traveled to Juneau from Washington to aid in the search. They walked through all the areas of Juneau where Christopher had been seen that night, including Mendenhall and Duck Creek, as well as the entire downtown area, but they were unable to find any further clues as to where he may have gone. They then decided to speak to his friends and a woman who he had lived with in the past, and they learned that he'd mentioned going to Bellingham, but they believed that he wouldn't have transport to get there. However, they were also told of the theory that he may have hidden in the trunk of a car that was being transported to Bellingham on the ferry, and his sister stated that she planned to carry out searches there as well. Some of Christopher's friends also added that he had spoken about going on a spiritual journey. It's unclear where he may have gone if he decided to follow through with those plans. A search was then conducted of the Thane campground area with the use of sniffer dogs, but they came up empty when they couldn't find his campsite and nothing of significance was found. Then the first possible lead came in via CCTV footage that was taken outside the Parkshore condominiums, which are located at 800 Franklin Street. In the footage, a man matching Christopher's description can be seen riding a bicycle. The man then stops and inspects two other bicycles that were parked nearby before leaving the area. But the footage was of no help as they couldn't see where he went after the fact, but he was possibly spotted again soon after. An acquaintance of Christopher's sent a photo to his sister, in which he could be seen eating a meal with an unknown woman at the Valley restaurant on the 6th of October. Investigators weren't able to positively identify that the man in the photo was Christopher. The woman was never identified, and so that lead also led to a dead end. Christopher remains missing today, and the Juneau Police Department has urged anyone who saw him on the night of his disappearance, or who has any information on his current whereabouts, to contact them at 907-586-0600. Alternatively, you can contact Detective Dawn Rasmussen at 360-202-6533, or Liddy Marie Armstrong at 425-791-5533. CCTV security footage is usually used to ascertain a missing person's last movements, who they interacted with before vanishing, and what vehicle they may have been driving around the time leading up to their disappearance. But sometimes investigators see more than they bargained for when CCTV footage is reviewed. In some cases, they find that the missing person was involved in illegal activities, such as selling of illegal substances, breaking into parked cars, or even burglaries involving houses or shops. In these cases, they often find that the missing person may have fled the area to avoid being captured by law enforcement, or having heard that they're being sought by police, decided to lay low for a while. But there are also cases where security footage reveals that the missing person's situation is far more dire than first assumed. For example, in the case of missing woman Jennifer Keese, who vanished from Florida on the 24th of January, 2006. At the time, Jennifer was working at the Central Florida Investments timeshare company, and upon finishing her shift on the 23rd, she spoke to her boyfriend and her father on the phone, but she's not been heard from since. Her boyfriend tried contacting her the next morning, but her phone had been turned off, and his calls went directly to voicemail. When she didn't show up for a meeting at work that morning, Jennifer's employer contacted her parents, who then traveled to her condo but found that she wasn't there. There were, however, signs that she had gotten ready for work, and they noticed that her purse, electronic devices, and briefcase were missing from her condo. A car, a black 2004 Chevrolet Malibu was also missing from its parking spot. When police arrived on the scene, they theorized that Jennifer had been kidnapped while making her way to her car that morning. 2 days later, Jennifer's car was found unattended at an apartment complex that's situated around a mile from her condo. Investigators scrutinized the CCTV footage of the parking lot and were surprised to learn that her car had been driven there by someone they couldn't identify. This person can be seen arriving in Jennifer's car, after which they sit in the vehicle for around 30 seconds before getting out and walking away. Unfortunately, their face is obscured by the complex's fencing, and they still have not been identified. Inside the car, investigators found signs of a struggle that had taken place, and they strongly suspect foul play, but Jennifer remains missing to this day. In a similar case, 29-year-old Tabitha Queen from Bastrop, Louisiana, disappeared under suspicious circumstances on the 9th of May, 2021. She had spoken to her mother Mary on the phone since it was Mother's Day, but the call didn't end as expected. Tabitha's mother told investigators that she heard her daughter talking to someone who was in the car with her, and when she asked who it was, she simply stated that she needed to go, after which she hung up. Her mother immediately called back, but Tabitha's phone had already been turned off and went straight to voicemail. Mary and other family members continued to try and contact her, but all attempts failed, and so they decided to go to her house to see if she was okay. But upon arrival, they found no signs of Tabitha and realized that her 3 children were in the house alone. When asked if they knew where their mother was, the children told the family that she'd gone to Save You More grocery store and never returned. It was then that they knew something was very wrong, since she wouldn't simply leave her children unattended for an extended period of time. After failing to find any further clues, Tabitha's family reported her missing on the 11th of May, and when surveillance footage from the grocery store was checked, investigators found footage of Tabitha as expected. The footage shows her entering the store on the 9th of May, and she can be seen paying for a few items before leaving again, carrying a few bags as she walks through the store's automated doors. There were, however, some unsettling details that came from Tabitha's 11-year-old daughter. She told police officers that her mother had been arguing with the man who'd been using Tabitha's car. She said that the man, accompanied by a friend, arrived at Tabitha's home with the car, but Tabitha then realized that there was a strange smell coming from the vehicle. She asked the man what the smell was, but he refused to answer, and when she checked the area where the spare tire was kept, she realized it contained biological material and assumed that that's where the smell was coming from. She then told the man that he could no longer use her car, since she didn't know what it was being used for, which caused the man to lose his temper, and he threatened to return to the house to end Tabitha's life. Then, later that afternoon, a van arrived at the house and an attempt was made to abduct Tabitha. It's unclear whether this attempt was successful, but her family believes that she met with foul play, and they've asked for the FBI to become involved, but the police have stated that they won't be asking for assistance since they're handling the case. Tabitha's car was eventually found parked on West Pine Street, and investigators noticed that CCTV cameras were set up nearby. When they checked the footage, they were shocked to find that the car had not been left there by Tabitha, but by an unidentified man. In the footage, Tabitha's car can be seen arriving, and it's then driven between 2 buildings where the driver stops. They then sit in the car for some time before eventually getting out and walking down the road, out of sight of the camera. In a second piece of footage from a camera across the road, the car can be seen more clearly as it arrives, but investigators were still unable to identify the person who was behind the wheel at the time. The footage was made available to the public, and investigators asked anyone who recognized the man in the footage to come forward, since he clearly has information on what happened to Tabitha. But no one came forward, and they were left back at square one. Tabitha's car was thoroughly searched, and swabs were taken to be sent to the crime lab, but the results are still pending, and only time will tell if they contain any useful DNA that could lead to Tabitha's abductors. The area around her car was also searched, but no evidence was found, as the man in the footage didn't linger around before leaving. Tabitha's family has been informed that the police have a person of interest in the case, but they've yet to make an arrest, and it's unclear who this person is or how they're connected to her disappearance. If you have any information on Tabitha's case, you're asked to get in contact with the Bastrop Police at 318-281-1322. The police usually release CCTV footage of a missing person as soon as possible, in hopes that someone may remember details from the time of the recording. But in some cases, the footage is only released on a later date, after the case has already gone cold. This is exactly what happened in the case of the disappearance of 28-year-old Lisa Govan, who vanished without a trace from Western Australia in 1999. Lisa originally hailed from Lancashire, England, but she and her family moved to Perth, Australia. There, she met a man named Tim, and the two soon became a couple. They then decided to move to Kalgoorlie, which was a big change in lifestyle for Lisa, since it's known to be a type of Wild West mining town, but her family believes she enjoyed living there. It would be the first time that Lisa lived far away from her family, but she kept in touch by calling her parents every week, and she also had regular text conversations with her sister, Jeanette. Lisa had started adjusting to her new surroundings, and soon she became friends with some of her colleagues from work. On the 7th of October, 1999, she and a few of these friends made plans to go out, but before driving to the agreed meeting spot, Lisa dropped Tim off at work since it had started raining. She then drove to the Exchange Hotel, where she met up with one of her coworkers, and they then traveled to a nightclub called Safari, which was located on Hannah Street. Here, she and her friends had a few drinks, and at 4:45 a.m. she left with a coworker, who's only known as the Bald Man. The two then hailed a taxi and left, but after driving only a short distance, Lisa asked the driver to return to the club, explaining that she had seen one of her friends outside the club, and she wanted to talk to her for a while. The driver complied and dropped Lisa off again, leaving the man to travel home by himself. He did, however, tell investigators that Lisa had planned to go back to his house later that morning, after talking to her friend, but she never showed up. He called her cell phone multiple times but got no answer, and he never saw her again. Police officers questioned the man on multiple occasions and have made it clear that he's not suspected of being involved in her disappearance. It would later come to light that Lisa had switched her phone off on purpose. After dropping Tim off and driving to the hotel, Tim kept phoning her as he was unhappy about the fact that she was out with friends while he was stuck at work. He continued to call her throughout the night, and at one point, a call resulted in an argument when he asked her to go home, and she decided it would be better to turn her phone off to avoid further fighting. Lisa was then seen once again the following morning at around 7:30 a.m. outside a business called Bunnings on Boulder Road. She was then seen walking across the road to the Foundry Hotel liquor store. When witnesses were questioned, they revealed that Lisa was also seen playing pool at a biker gang clubhouse at around 7:45 a.m. Lisa was seen entering the clubhouse and spending time inside, but no one knew when she left or whether she was with someone at the time. Investigators believe she left the club unharmed, but they have no information on where she may have gone after the fact. In CCTV footage from the club that was released later, Lisa can be seen drinking and talking to multiple people in the clubhouse. At one point, she could be seen talking to a man with a ponytail, wearing a dark jacket, before chatting to two men in light-colored clothing. She then speaks to a man with a white shirt and a bald patch before they walk down the clubhouse stairs. They were then captured by a different camera as they walked outside. They then join a group of people who are gathered in the parking lot, and Lisa can be seen talking to multiple people. Nothing in the footage seems to indicate that Lisa was in any kind of danger, and the footage offered no clues to her whereabouts. Jeanette told investigators that she was unsure why Lisa was at the bikers' clubhouse. Tim did own a motorbike, but he was in no way affiliated with the biker gang, and she had never even mentioned knowing anyone who had anything to do with the club. Lisa's other sister, Sharon, told police officers that Lisa was in the habit of visiting the gang's premises, and on one occasion she had a conversation with her about it, since she thought it was too risky for Lisa to be in the gang's presence. But Lisa shrugged her concerns off, stating that it wasn't a big deal since she considered many of the people in the club as friends. Investigators would then tell them that a person is only allowed to enter the clubhouse by invitation, and so they believe she was indeed friends with some of the gang's members. The following morning, when Tim arrived home from work, he found their house empty and decided to open a missing person case. but he was told they would have to wait 48 hours before he could open a case, and so he got on his bike and started searching for his wife. But while frantically searching, he sustained an injury and decided to go to the hospital. He then called Jeanette and Lisa's mother, Pat, but neither had seen her, and the family began to worry that something might have happened to her. Pat had arranged to have a phone call with Lisa later that day, but the call never came, and they knew that the situation was dire. When a missing person case was finally opened, investigators raided properties belonging to the biker gang, but were unable to find anything useful. Lisa's parents started searching the area where she was last seen with the use of metal detectors, thinking that a piece of her clothing that contained a piece of metal could lead them to her remains, but they too failed to find any further clues. Members of the club were questioned, and investigators stated that they received credible information, but declined to reveal what it was that they were told. To this day, no further traces of Lisa have ever been found, and a $1 million reward has been offered to anyone with information leading to closure in the case. Lisa has brown hair and blue eyes. She stands around 5 foot 1 inches tall and has a slim build. At the time of her disappearance, she was wearing a black shirt and a black long-sleeved top. She was also wearing a pair of sandals and a leather choker containing a dolphin pendant. If you or anyone you know has any information on this case, you're asked to contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-333-000. Alternatively, you can contact the Kalgoorlie Detective's Office at 08-9021-9703. It isn't often that investigators give up hope of finding a missing person alive, but that seems to be the case in the disappearance of Brianna Murat, a 22-year-old woman from New Zealand. Brianna's mother, Jasmine Gray, has revealed that she's been told by investigators that her daughter will most likely not be returning home alive, but added that they believe 2 men may hold some answers in the mystery, as she was last seen in their company. What is known in the investigation is that Brianna was picked up by a male friend of hers on the 26th of August, 2022, and the pair traveled to Palmerston North area, where they spent the night. The following day, she was seen in a nearby liquor store at around 11:15 a.m., but it isn't known what she did during the rest of that day. Later that night, she asked her friend to drive her back home, and he was happy to oblige. But they didn't travel directly to her house, as they made a few stops along the way. First, they stopped to pick up another man, after which they made their way to Kimberley Reserve, which is located close to Levin. They spent some time there, after which they drove to Otaki. Here, her friend used her debit card to withdraw cash from her bank account, and they then drove to Hyde Park, where they picked up yet another friend on the corner of State Highway 1 and Dehoro Beach Road. Up to this point, Brianna's movements are clear and confirmed, but it's what happened next that confused investigators, her friends, as well as her family. For reasons unknown, Brianna then suddenly started running down the beach before disappearing into the night, and she's not been seen or heard from again. After a missing person investigation was started, police officers checked Brianna's bank accounts, but found they had seen no activity since she mysteriously disappeared. They also checked her phone records, but they found that they'd also seen no activity and couldn't positively track her phone, as it had been turned off. Her family has also received no word from her, and her social media accounts have all been silent since she went missing. Her family has stated that she was in the habit of keeping in touch with them, and that her silence is completely out of character, giving them even more reason to believe that something untoward has happened to her. Investigators have interviewed the people who were with Brianna at the time when she went missing, but rather cryptically, they've stated that these interviews left them with more questions than answers. They believe that someone had to have seen something that night, and have asked anyone with information to come forward, but for the time being, they've received no tips from the public, and Brianna's whereabouts are still unknown. On the 28th of August, Brianna's handbag was found on the Sea Road access, but it contained nothing useful to the case. There is, however, the matter of a purple suitcase that investigators believe could hold some clues to her disappearance. The suitcase is believed to have belonged to one of the men who were with Brianna on the beach, and although he told them what was inside, they stated that they needed to locate it or any information on it to verify what he has told them. According to some sources, the purple suitcase was found alongside Brianna's handbag by a member of the public, who then took a photo of both items. But by the time investigators learned about the two items, the suitcase had been removed, though it isn't known by whom. When CCTV footage of the liquor store was checked, investigators were able to confirm that Brianna was indeed inside the store with her family, and they released a still from the footage in hopes that it may jog the memories of anyone who saw her that day. Many months later, Brianna's mother, Jasmine, created a post on Facebook that included a conversation with the man who found the suitcase. The man told her that one of the men who was on the beach with Brianna called him and asked him to go back to the beach to get some of his possessions. He did as he was asked, and upon arriving at the beach, found the purple suitcase with Brianna's handbag sitting on top. He added that both the handbag and the suitcase were wet, and when he looked around the area, he also found a black shirt that clearly belonged to a woman. He then phoned the man to explain what he had found, and the man asked him to look around to see if he could find his pants. He searched the area once more, but he couldn't find anything, so he decided to look in the suitcase, opening it slightly. He stated that inside the suitcase was a pair of gray tracksuit pants and a white shirt, but he couldn't see the man's pants. He relayed this information, after which the man asked if he could see anything else. He responded that he couldn't, and the man told him to get out of there. He then picked up what he could find and met the man in question, who he believes took the purple suitcase, but he didn't know where to. Inexplicably, Brianna's phone was found on the beach 5 weeks after she disappeared. After it was handed over to investigators, they managed to switch it on and charge the battery, which led Jasmine to believe that it could not have been there for very long, and that it may have been left there by someone after the fact. With no further clues being found, investigators appealed to anyone who saw a silver Peugeot in the Otaki Main Road, Kimberly Reserve, Tehoro Sea Road, Hyde Park, Marycrest School, or Peka Peka areas to come forward, since they believed the purple suitcase came from that vehicle belonging to one of the men who she was seen with. They also stated that they would like anyone who spotted a green Honda on the morning of the 29th of August to contact them, though they didn't reveal how this vehicle was connected to Brianna's case. Since this is an ongoing investigation, investigators have not released any further information to the public, but have asked anyone who has information on Brianna's whereabouts or her movements after running down to the beach to contact Crime Stoppers at 0800-555-111. You can also submit a tip online at police.govt.nz/USE-105, quoting the reference update report. A $10,000 reward has been offered to anyone who can provide useful information leading to Brianna's current whereabouts, but for now, her disappearance remains an unsolved mystery. The weather in Austin, Texas in December of 2020 was unusually harsh. Although the days were cold, the nights often dropped well below freezing, a none too common phenomenon in a southern city. The capital of Texas, Austin, is located in the center of the state and is home to nearly 1 million residents. Austin and the surrounding suburbs are fairly well off, with more people working in professional industries than elsewhere in the state. The owner-occupied housing rate is more than half. In those cold months of 2020, one of the region's many homeowners was Robin Searcy. Robin owned a home in southeast Travis County with a fairly sizable yard. Reports have not published information about the house, but public records suggest that it sits on a 2.5-acre lot off of Maha Loop Road. Like millions of people across the country, Robin set up security cameras connected to an app in order to keep his eyes on his property. He told reporters that in the morning, he would usually get up and check the app first thing for any notifications. On a Sunday morning in December of 2020, he saw something strange. Robin woke up in the morning to see that his cameras had recorded movement on his property overnight at about 2 a.m. The movement had been captured in a series of still surveillance images. Available only in black and white, the images are unsettling and eerie. Robin was understandably concerned. The pictures, which were published by the local news site KXAN, show a female figure walking alone through an open expanse of yard. Despite the temperature, the woman isn't wearing a jacket. She has her arms wrapped around herself in some of the images, as if she's cold. She's wearing only what appears to be a long white nightgown with half-length sleeves, and has long hair. She looks like a relic of another century. In some of the images, the woman looks like she could be holding something in her hands. Making the situation even more unsettling was the fact that she looked young, like a teenager or even a young girl, and she was all alone. She walked across Robin's property for approximately 3 minutes before moving out of the line of sight of his cameras. Concerned, Robin quickly reported the sighting to the local police. He also shared the images with neighbors, wondering if any of them knew who the woman could be. Neither Robin nor any of his neighbors recognized her face. Some began to speculate, could the woman be some sort of apparition or supernatural sighting? Her outfit and demeanor seemed odd enough, but after just a few days, local police returned with a logical explanation for what Robin had seen. On Tuesday, December 30th, the Mustang Ridge Police Department confirmed to Robin and to KXAN that the woman was a local resident who'd been involved in a car crash nearby. She was unharmed and walked across Robin's property on her way home. The department did not confirm why the woman didn't have a coat or why she didn't knock on any doors for help, but with this information, they did put the unsettling mystery of the strange CCTV sighting to rest. In February of 2018, Christopher James Bates stopped at a gas station in the town of Alexandra on New Zealand's South Island. The 22-year-old purchased a pack of cigarettes before walking out of the station. CCTV footage from the station shows the young man wearing a white t-shirt, maroon pants, and a light beige jacket. He walks out of the view of the cameras and out of his life. Christopher has not been seen since that afternoon. Somehow, and for some reason, he vanished with hardly a trace. On February 11th, 2018, Chris was freshly 22 years old. He'd recently completed his Bachelor of Commerce degree at Otago University and was in the process of getting his first post-college job. Chris was living at his family's home in Alexandra, a historic gold mining town in the central Otago region. The area was settled in the late 1800s when huge gold dredges pulled up the metal from the nearby Clutha River. Today, the area is known for its vineyards, as well as its local hiking trails and stunning natural beauty. Chris reportedly had several friends in the area, and when he left his home on February 11th, he was headed to a nearby riverfront to catch up with the group and potentially go for a swim. At 3:51 p.m., the cameras at the Z gas station on Tarbert Street, a few blocks from his home, captured him purchasing a pack of John Player special branded cigarettes. He used a bank card for the purchase. Sometime after this purchase, Chris stopped at home, leaving his wallet along with his bank card in his room. No one saw him, so the timing of his stop can't be confirmed. After that, his movements are largely a mystery. According to investigators, Chris did have his cell phone with him, but it was an older model that's been described as battered and unreliable. He was regularly in the habit of turning off the device to conserve power. His father, John, recalled that Chris sometimes had issues with even using the phone at all. John told the New Zealand Herald, a local newspaper, that Chris's phone was always cutting out. He couldn't ring his friends because his phone wasn't working. Despite these issues though, local police were able to get a partial trace on the mobile device in the days after Chris went missing. According to reports, the phone was targeted to a wedge of land north and east of Alexandra at about 6:30 p.m. on the 11th. The last signal from the device was confirmed to be at 10:50 a.m. the following day on the 12th. By February 16th, police were preparing for an extensive land and water search with a team in the Alexandra area. The town lies at the junction of two rivers, and there was some concern that Chris could have somehow gotten swept away by the rushing waters. Search efforts included boat teams and the use of trained dogs, as well as drones. Of particular interest was the area on the lower slopes of the Nabi Range, where Chris's cell phone had pinged. It was here that investigators discovered one of the only pieces of evidence that they found to date, a discarded packet of John Player Special cigarettes. Police carefully tested this evidence with advanced forensic technology. Male DNA was found on the jacket, but test results were inconclusive. The DNA could not be confirmed as a match with Chris's mother. As the days wore on, not one, but two brutal floods swept through the area. making it increasingly difficult for searchers to traverse the dense swampland and vegetation surrounding the town. It took more than 3 weeks for teams to get to the flooded areas, and by the time they arrived, any evidence that had been there was gone. In total, hundreds of hours went into the heartbreakingly unsuccessful search for Chris in February and March of 2018. After 3.5 years, Chris's case was referred to the local coroner, a procedural part of missing person investigations in New Zealand. This was in June of 2021. Since then, there have been no updates on the case. Chris's parents, Trish and John, told reporters that they hoped to find Chris so that they could properly grieve their son. John said that their ordeal, quote, only ends when we eventually find the clue that allows us to lay Chris to rest. Chris's case remains open to this day. Anyone with information is asked to call 105, the New Zealand police number for these types of cases. Leslie Benisou was excited about a date when she last spoke with her family in April of 2022. Leslie, who was taking classes at Sacramento State, was excited to meet a connection from OkCupid who went by the name of Bea. She told her sister Carolyn that she was headed to Sacramento's Capitol building and that her date was going to be picking her up from there. On April 15th, Leslie left her home in the morning to meet Bea. Her phone connected to the network for the last time around 8:45 a.m. After that, there was total radio silence. Leslie's family became concerned when she didn't answer her texts in the days following the date. The Saturday after was her 42nd birthday, but messages went undelivered and unresponded to. It was then that Leslie's loved ones knew for sure there was something wrong. Carolyn said that although Leslie didn't always answer texts right away, it was unusual that texts weren't even delivering. The last recorded sighting of Leslie was on a Friday night, April 15th, when she was seen on CCTV footage outside of the Orchid Thai restaurant and bar in Sacramento. The cameras captured her walking down 16th Street towards a nearby bar. In the images, Leslie is wearing a white t-shirt and ripped jeans. She's carrying a brown leather backpack and has a black jacket over her arm. She doesn't appear distressed or in any danger. In the days following that April evening, the Benisou family reported Leslie's case to the Sacramento police, who reportedly told them that foul play wasn't expected. But Leslie's loved ones believed that she would not intentionally stay out of touch for so long. But the case was blown open the following Friday by an unusual piece of evidence. According to a Facebook post by Leslie's sister, Cammie, the missing person was spotted in San Francisco on Friday, April 29th. Cammie wrote that Leslie remained missing to her family, but their fears that she was taken had been put to rest. At the time of writing this comment, which was in May of 2022, Cammie still hoped that Leslie's family would be able to find her and bring her home. No updates have been posted since. It's been nearly a year since Leslie left her home to meet Bea. In an interview with Fox News, Leslie's sister Carolyn shared a message. She said, quote, "Leslie, if you're watching this, if you see this, know that we're looking for you. We love you, we want you to come home, and hopefully you're safe, and we'll see you soon." Anyone with information about Leslie's whereabouts is asked to contact the Sacramento Police Department at 916-808-5471. In February of 2022, 41-year-old Felix De Jesus was recovering from hip replacement surgery. He was staying with his mother in the town of Halden, located near Paterson, in the northern part of New Jersey. On the night of February 2nd, Felix, who'd been having a few drinks at home, stopped at a deli in Paterson to pick up some snacks. He never made it home. His family reported him missing the following day, and the Halden police released a photo with the request for more information. What they didn't tell the De Jesus family was that 2 officers were potentially the last to have seen the missing man. In fact, Felix's family found out not from the police, but from the owner of the bodega where Felix had gone, that he'd been arrested on the evening of February 2nd. Felix's mother told reporters that the family was passing out flyers in the stores when the owner of the deli came and told the family that Felix was under arrest by the Paterson police, and he'd been taken the previous evening. It's unclear whether or not the Hilden police knew immediately that Felix had been in police custody in Patterson. According to news reports, authorities said that they didn't immediately reveal Felix's police encounter at the start of the missing person case because of the confidentiality of internal affair police probes. Felix's family have alleged it took them more than a week to find out that Felix had been in the custody of the Patterson Police Department. In that time, they'd been calling around to local hospitals, morgues, and anywhere else they thought that their loved one might be. Patterson police said that they'd been called to the deli on the evening of February 2nd, 2022, because Felix, who had been drinking, was accused of harassing a female customer. When they arrived, they took him into custody and drove him in their patrol car to a nearby park, which has been described as a hangout area. Police records as well as eyewitness testimony confirmed that Felix was dropped off in the park, which was located along the Passaic River. A group of people in the area say that they saw Felix there and they made a run to the liquor store. When they returned, Felix was gone and he's not been seen since. Felix's family pushed for greater accountability from the police department. They could not understand why he'd been taken to the park in the first place and hoped the release of records or body cam footage would provide some clarity. Finally, after 4 months of tireless advocacy, the Patterson Police Department finally released 4 minutes of surveillance footage that was recorded by the cameras worn by the arresting officers. The footage revealed that the police arrived at the scene and promptly cuffed Felix, pushing him to the wet, snowy ground. He was wearing a white t-shirt and jacket. Felix is heard complaining in Spanish to the officers that his hand is broken, and reports confirmed that he seemed intoxicated. The footage also picked up the woman who Felix had reportedly harassed. She can be heard telling the officers that she didn't want to press charges. The arresting officers placed Felix in their patrol car, but instead of taking Felix to the station, a warming center, or even the hospital for his hand, they dropped him off at a park. He didn't have a jacket and the temperature was well below freezing. Notably though, their drive was not recorded. Both body camera recordings abruptly end just after the 4-minute mark. The last sighting of Felix is there in the back seat of the police vehicle. The De Jesus family feels that they've had to beg and plead for any information about their missing relative. According to NorthJersey.com, several of Felix's family members have become regulars at city council meetings in Patterson, often standing at the microphone to condemn the way that local officials have handled the case. Months after Felix went missing, in October of 2022, the officers involved in the case received a 90-day suspension without pay for violating regulations, including breaking rules regarding body cameras and transporting citizens. But they've both since resumed duty. The investigation did not account for what happened to Felix after officers dropped him at the park, and since then, no new information has surfaced about him. In February of 2023, his family marked a year since his disappearance. There's a $15,000 reward for information that leads to the successful location of Felix De Jesus. Anyone with information is asked to contact Captain George Guzman Jr., Detective Sergeant Timothy Lindbergh, or Detective Christian Clavo of the Hilden Police at 973-790-4444, or tips@hildenpd.org. Informants can also contact the Patterson Police Department Major Crimes Division at 973-321-1120, or the Passaic County Prosecutor's Tip Line at 1-877-370-PCPO. One of the most shocking true crime CCTV cases of all time features an example of mistaken identity and the use of video footage to solve the case. Juan Catalan, a Dodgers fan from California, was ultimately saved by video evidence that proved he was at a baseball game during the time a scary crime was being committed. On May 12, 2003, a young woman named Martha Puebla was tragically shot outside of her home in Sun Valley, California. She was just 16 years old. Only days later, she had testified in court against a man named Mario Catalan, Juan's brother. Mario was charged as an accessory in a gang-related attack. In November of 2002, Mario had been driving a man named Jose Ledesma, a member of the Vineland Boys gang, who committed a drive-by shooting against another man at a stoplight on Lankershim Boulevard. Mario drove off after the crime, making himself an accomplice. Jose Ledesma was dating Martha Puebla, the 16-year-old girl who testified against him in court in May of 2003. After the preliminary hearing, Jose called another member of the Vineland Boys and told him that he needed Martha to disappear. He said that Martha was dropping dimes, slang for revealing information. The call, which Jose made while incarcerated, was recorded by the Los Angeles PD, but the contents remained unknown until years later in 2005. Because this crucial piece of evidence was missed, Martha's attacker, Raul Robledo, was not apprehended until 2008. Instead, the blame was placed on another man with ties to the gang, Juan Catalan. Although Juan's brother Mario was involved with the gang, Juan was not. He credited the birth of his daughter Melissa for keeping him from getting involved with illegal activity. He met Melissa's mother, Alma, in high school, and the pair had their daughter as teenagers. Juan said that he knew he had to keep away from the Vineland Boys in order to protect Melissa and give her the best possible life. He told Los Angeles Magazine that he looks at Melissa's birth as God sending an angel to save me. On May 12th, Martha Puebla answered her cell phone and stepped outside of her house in Sun Valley. She was hanging out with a group of friends, including Juan Ibanez, who was with her as they sat on the curb outside. Ibanez said that a car began circling the block before a man jumped out. The man shot Martha twice and fired after Ibanez as he ran. Ibanez didn't get a good look, but worked with police to create a sketch of the man. Days later, investigators picked up a man who claimed to be a part of the Vineland Boys. He said that he knew about Martha's murder, which he claimed had been committed by an associate. The man, whose name was Francisco Salvador, told police that the attacker's name was Juan. He drove a white pickup truck and recently returned from Mexico, and had a brother named Mario. Francisco said that police should be able to piece it together from there. Police pieced something together, but they certainly didn't use all of the information they'd been provided. Juan Catalan didn't drive a white pickup truck, and he had never been to Mexico, but he did have a brother named Mario, who was an associate of the Vineland Boys. Based on this information, a team of police ambushed Juan outside of his work. With guns drawn, LAPD's 20-man Special Investigations Section pushed him into a patrol car and brought him to a holding room where they kept him for hours. They left behind Juan's girlfriend, Alma, who had driven him to work with their daughter Melissa in the back seat. Both had witnessed the arrest, as had Juan's brother, who he worked for. The team left Juan in the cell for hours without revealing to him why he was there. Finally, they called him into an interrogation room and told him that he was under arrest for the murder of Martha Puebla. Juan said that he was innocent and begged for an opportunity to take a lie detector test. The police declined. Juan insisted, though, that he had never harmed anyone and said that he had proof. He'd been at a Dodgers game on May 12th. Juan was a lifelong fan of baseball. When he was a young boy, an uncle had taken him to Dodgers Stadium to watch the legendary Mexican pitcher, Fernando Valenzuela. His love affair with the Dodgers began there. When he was 18, he caught a home run ball as it sailed into the stands. Juan wanted to share his love of baseball with his family, and on May 12th, he was at the game with his daughter. He even had ticket stubs. Tragically, though, that wouldn't be enough. The prosecutor in Juan's case, Beth Silverman, had never lost a murder case. She was nicknamed Sniper, and she was not willing to go down without a fight. Armed with the testimony from Juan Ibanez, who had tentatively identified Juan Catalan as the man that he saw shoot Martha, Silverman believed she had an airtight case. She theorized that Juan had somehow gotten involved to protect his brother Mario, who was a known gang member even though Juan was not. Juan needed evidence besides the ticket stubs from the game, something that would definitively prove he was there. Even a cell phone call, which pinged at Dodger Stadium, wasn't enough. Prosecutors argued that someone else could have had Juan's phone. While both sides were building their cases, Juan was held in prison. Because Martha was just 16, Juan was targeted by the inmates as a child killer and was constantly threatened. He was horrified by the violence and rage that he saw on a daily basis. He barely slept and didn't eat. He said that, quote, "it was just normal that people were popping up dead. The place is for animals, it's not for human beings. There was no safety there, and months passed. Desperate, Juan told his defense attorney that he remembered seeing a camera crew at Dodger Stadium. Maybe he'd been caught on film. Juan's attorney, Todd Melnick, combed through the play-by-plays of the game, but the footage was too grainy to prove anything. Finally, he got in touch with the media relations records from the Dodgers and struck gold. A camera crew from HBO had been at the stadium that day. They were filming for Larry David's show Curb Your Enthusiasm. At first, the HBO staff told Todd that they wouldn't release pre-production footage. But when Todd explained the circumstances, he said that Juan was facing the death penalty for something he didn't do. The crew then agreed to show him the footage. On one of the tapes, in plain sight, Larry David and Juan Catalan walked right past one another. The time code on the tape indicated that it was filmed between 8:58 and 9:10 p.m. on May 12th. The video evidence, combined with the phone call Juan received later that evening, confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt that Juan was at the Dodgers game. At the close of Juan's preliminary hearing, a judge dismissed the case, and he was free to go. In a 2021 profile, written nearly 20 years after the fact, Juan told reporters that while he still works for his father, he and his two daughters, now 23 and 21, are all working on their college degrees together. Although he's deeply traumatized by the time he spent in jail, he remains friends with Todd Melnick, who's still a defense attorney, and his story was featured in a 2017 documentary called The Long Shot that brought to light ongoing issues with policing in LA. If it hadn't been for the video footage that night, Juan would still be in jail today and potentially facing the death penalty. On the one-year anniversary of the UK's biggest art heists, CCTV footage was released to get more publicity and hopefully answers to this unsolved crime. Almost 2 years on from that footage being released, the Christchurch picture gallery theft remains a mystery. The crime took place on March 14, 2020. A group of thieves stole ladders from Christchurch Meadow in Oxford. They then crossed the meadow to the museum, which is part of one of the University of Oxford's colleges. At around 11 p.m., the group climbed onto the roof of the picture gallery, broke through a skylight, and used the ladders to lower themselves in. CCTV footage from the incident, which has been released to the public, doesn't show much. The CCTV cameras weren't equipped with night vision, but the group used flashlights to let themselves see. These are visible as they look over the framed paintings. The Christchurch Picture Gallery focuses on Italian art from the 14th to 18th centuries, worth millions of dollars. The thieves seemed to know what they were doing. 3 paintings were taken from their frames, but kept on their stretchers to keep them in shape. The 3 paintings selected were Soldier on Horseback by Anthony van Dyck, Soldier Studying a Plan by Salvador Rosa, and A Boy Drinking by Annabelle Carracci. A Boy Drinking dates all the way back to 1518. Altogether, the paintings are worth £10 million. The items were lifted onto the roof as the thieves made their getaway. Police believe the thieves likely crossed over Jubilee Bridge, but there is a possibility that they made their escape by boat, as the rivers Cherwell and Thames aren't far. Authorities asked for anybody who might have noticed the group carrying large objects or loading them into a van to come forward. So far, there's been no new information on the strange case since the anniversary appeal for information. Usually, these kinds of thefts are followed by a ransom for the stolen artwork. Like the infamous Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist, there's been no sign of a ransom. The 3 empty frames remain hanging in the museum, waiting for the paintings to return. An art gallery in Seattle captured a strange theft on camera in April of 2022. It was one of 6 robberies at the gallery in 17 months, and the most audacious. It was around 5:30 p.m. on April 5th when the theft took place. Fossil and Stone in Seattle offers unique works of art, carved into fossils as well as some simple fossils on display. One of those was a 6-foot-long mammoth tusk worth thousands of dollars. A man wearing a hooded jacket, a cap, and scarf over his face wandered into the gallery. There were 2 members of staff in the store, including the owner, Kathy Lee. Kathy later told the media that she got a bad feeling about the criminal and had her pepper spray in hand as he looked around the store. CCTV footage shows the man entering and looking around before he spots the mammoth tusk, which was on display. He stares at it for a moment before suddenly grabbing it from the stand and leaving through an emergency escape. Outside, a purple PT Cruiser was parked with a getaway driver inside. The two criminals escaped. The car was later revealed to have also been stolen. Kathy chased the man out of the building and tried to pepper spray him, but in the confusion was holding the can the wrong way. The theft was Fossil and Stone's second in a month. By December, 4 more would take place. Another theft on December 18th was also caught on camera. A doorbell camera showed a man trying to force his way through the door just before 4 a.m. He later got into a silver SUV and tried to ram the car through the window. He couldn't get into the building and drove away. It's not known if the crimes are connected or just why this store has been targeted, given the uniqueness of the items making it harder for them to be sold on. In 2019, police released CCTV images in the hopes of tracking down the criminals responsible for a strange robbery. The CCTV footage looks mundane, with 2 vehicles fleeing the scene of the crime. The crime was the robbery of a toilet worth $5 million. The robbery took place in the early hours of September 14, 2019, at Blenheim Palace. Blenheim Palace is a 300-year-old building and the birthplace of Winston Churchill. Since 2014, it has hosted art exhibits. In September of 2019, it ran an exhibit called Victory is Not an Option, which featured work by the Italian artist Maurizio Catalan. Among the artwork was a piece called America, a fully functioning, solid gold lavatory. The piece had originally been part of an exhibition at a New York art gallery. This was to be its first visit to Europe. The first 2 days of the exhibition went without issue, but just before 5 a.m. on the exhibition's 3rd day, the police were alerted to a break-in at the palace. A group of thieves had torn the artwork away from where it was attached to the palace's plumbing system, leaving behind the roll of tissue and the flushing mechanism. The criminals fled the scene in 2 getaway vehicles. As well as losing the valuable artwork, the palace also had to deal with flooding and damage to the flooring. At first, there were accusations that this was a stunt on the part of the artist, but Catalan claimed he had no knowledge of the theft. More than 3 years on, police still have no clues as to what happened to this strange piece of art. In the weeks after the crime, police released some details, including CCTV images of one of the vehicles used in the theft. 2 stolen cars were used. One was a navy blue Volkswagen Golf R with cloned plates, which was seen on CCTV footage fleeing the scene of the crime. Police asked people at the time to check their own dashcam footage in case they'd caught anything suspicious. A number of people were arrested early on in the investigation, but all were released without charge. The artwork itself has never been found, and there have been no new clues that could lead to the crime being solved. 6 years ago, Michael Vanzant was spotted on CCTV footage searching for his friends while on a night out. The CCTV footage showed him walking in the direction of a beach, and he was never seen again. Michael was an Air Force veteran working at Edwards Air Force Base as a unit training manager. He had 3 children and shared custody with their mother, who he was in the process of divorcing. It had been an amicable breakup though, and the two were on good terms. On the afternoon of March 5th, 2016, Michael dropped off his children with his ex-partner. He then drove the 2 hours from his home in Lancaster, California to Hermosa Beach. He had plans to meet up with friends to watch some UFC fights and visit some clubs. Michael parked outside Quality Inn, where he was supposed to be sleeping that night, and then went to a club called the Underground with friends. They stayed until 10 p.m. before moving on to another club. They went to the Pier Plaza and got in line outside a bar called the American Junkie. The line was slow moving and Michael didn't want to wait. He told his friends he was going to the store next door to use the bathroom. The group decided to go to a different bar instead, and Michael hadn't returned yet, so they called and texted to tell him where they were, but he didn't answer. It would turn out his cell phone was out of battery. Shortly after the group left, Michael was caught on CCTV cameras back outside of the bar. He appeared to be looking for them. When he couldn't find them in the line, he wandered around the Pier Plaza searching for them. Both Michael and his group of friends were in CCTV footage for the next few hours. At times, they seemed to only miss one another by moments. During the night, Michael went to a liquor store where he purchased alcohol but didn't seem to go to any clubs. He was last seen on CCTV at 11:27 p.m. walking through a parking lot towards the beach. His friends returned to their hotel at 2 a.m. When he still wasn't there the next morning, they tried calling jails and hospitals, thinking he might have been picked up as drunk, but there was no sign of him. It wasn't until he failed to show up at work the next Monday that his friends realized something strange had happened. CCTV footage from the night was recovered by police and shared with the media. Michael's case featured on the TV show Disappeared, leading to calls with possible tips, but none have worked out. It's believed Michael likely ended up in the water. It wasn't uncommon for him to go swimming while drunk, but none of his belongings have ever been found. Anybody with information in this case can contact Hermosa Beach Police Department at 310-318-0360. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the mysterious disappearance of Robert Duff. He left behind 2 daughters who are still searching for an answer as to what happened to their father, as he was last seen on CCTV footage. CCTV images from January 12, 2013 show Robert taking money from an ATM in North London. It was just after 11 a.m. He was alone and there didn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary about him in the footage. It was the day before Robert's oldest daughter's 18th birthday. Robert was very close to his daughters and to his parents. He had a problem with illegal substances, but was what his family called a functioning user, able to hold down a job and keep his own apartment. Many who knew him had no idea he had any problems. So when he didn't show up for a birthday meal, his family knew something was wrong. Police were sent to his apartment to perform a welfare check. When nobody answered, the police forced their way inside. Inside, there were no signs that anything was wrong, but there was also no sign of Robert. It would emerge that the last time anybody had heard from Robert was on January 12th. That afternoon, he talked with his daughter Stephanie on the phone. About 45 minutes after that call, at around 9:15 p.m., Stephanie received another call from her father. The call went to voicemail and Robert left a message. It seemed like Robert had pocket dialed Stephanie, and the message was just a snippet of the conversation he was having. The voices of a woman and 2 men could be heard. One of the men had a Scottish accent, and none have been identified. According to Robert's family, the police were slow to act in his missing person case. Even though the disappearance was extremely out of character for Robert, it wasn't immediately clear to the authorities that there was anything wrong. That became apparent as more time passed and there was still no sign of the missing individual. Robert's phone and bank account remained untouched, and he didn't appear in any more CCTV footage. There were rumors that he'd gotten into a fight with 2 men and lost his life on the night of his disappearance. Over the years, multiple appeals for information have been made and tips have been called in. 2 men were arrested at one point, but released without charge as the investigation continued. The police have also searched waterways for clues as to what happened. Robert officially remains a missing person, but police believe he met with foul play. Crime Stoppers have offered a reward of $10,000 for information that leads to Robert's discovery. Anyone with information in the case can contact the police incident room at 0208-358-0200 or contact Crime Stoppers at 0800-555-111. As of the 5th of May, 2017, a creepy unsolved mystery was caught on CCTV on Putney Bridge in southwest London. But despite the fact that it happened in broad daylight and there's plenty of evidence, it remains unsolved. At around 7:40 a.m., bus driver Olivus Salbris was driving his route heading south on Putney Bridge. Thanks to traffic at the time in the morning, he was only traveling at around 12 miles per hour, and if it wasn't for that fact, things could have ended very differently. He would tell police that the road ahead of him was clear one moment, and the next, a woman had fallen into the road and he narrowly missed hitting her by swerving just in time. The bus came to a halt inches from her head. When security footage from the bus was checked, it would prove that she hadn't fallen by accident, but was in fact pushed by a jogger who was running in the opposite direction. In the video, the man, who is of a stocky build, has short brown hair and brown eyes, and he's wearing blue shorts and a gray t-shirt. As he draws level with the woman, he suddenly lurches at her and pushes her into the road and keeps jogging as if nothing happened. About 15 minutes later, he came jogging back the other way again, and the woman tried to talk to him, but he ignored her and just kept jogging past. The incident was widely publicized by the media, and news outlets were appealing to anyone with information on the man's identity to come forward, but to no avail. The case also drew the attention of internet sleuths who attempted to uncover the man's identity, but they too were unsuccessful. Police interviewed 50 men and arrested 3, but they were all eventually cleared of the crime and released. Despite his image being caught on camera, the man has never been identified, and his true intentions remain an unsolved mystery 4 years later. On the 25th of February 2014, an off-duty police officer and his wife were walking their dog along Perranporth Beach in Cornwall, southwest England, when they stumbled upon a shocking scene that remains an unsolved mystery to this day. About 10 feet in front of the watering hole bar, they spotted a shape at the water's edge and joked that it looked like someone had drowned. Truthfully, they thought it may be a couple of plastic containers, but when they moved closer to see what it actually was, they were dismayed to find that their first guess was correct. A man, later identified as 64-year-old Alan Geel, was lying face down in the sand, wearing only socks and one shoe. They noticed that he had a headphone cord hanging down his torso and a sweater washed up beside him, containing a small amount of biological material. Police would later discover that the headphones and sock had been placed inside his mouth. The officer immediately dialed 999 and the beach was closed off for investigation. When police looked into his background and final hours, they recovered CCTV footage of Alan showing him walking past Bridge Tools in Waterbridge at 11:52 a.m. He's then seen 18 minutes later withdrawing $100 from an ATM on Molesworth Street, after which he enters a co-op where he bought a newspaper and a box of plasters. He then went back home, and at 12:50 p.m., raised voices were heard coming from his flat. At 4:45, he was seen again on CCTV, heading to the center of Waterbridge with a backpack on his back. He then caught a Greyhound bus to Truro and arrived there at 6:14 p.m. For the next half an hour, he's seen on several occasions walking around the city center, after which he boards another bus to Newquay, where he is again spotted walking up East Street. At 9:15, he boards a bus back to Perranporth after traveling back to Newquay. At 10:27, he's seen for the last time walking along Beach Road near the area where he was ultimately found. A complex investigation followed, but despite their best efforts, police were unable to figure out how he had ended up in the water and whether he had been a victim of foul play or not. An unsolved mystery that has been baffling investigators for nearly a decade was close to being solved when the possibility arose that Maryanne Fowler was the victim of a serial killer known as Derek Todd Lee. Maryanne Fowler mysteriously disappeared from a shopping center parking lot off LA 415 in Port Allen in Louisiana on Christmas Eve of 2002. She was on her way to visit with her husband, Jerry, a former state elections commissioner who was doing a stint in federal prison in Beaumont, Texas for misusing state funds. When an investigation was launched into Mary's disappearance, police found that a call had been made from Lee's cell phone at 5:20 p.m. on that day. That call had connected via a tower 13 miles from the shopping center where Mary mysteriously disappeared. He made another call at 11:20 p.m., this time connecting via a tower just south of Baton Rouge. It was unclear who the calls were made to and if they were made by Lee, but they knew that the phone belonged to him. CCTV footage from that night showed a dark-colored truck, similar to the one owned by Lee, outside a liquor and tobacco store. Another vehicle, believed to be Mary's, can also be seen in the footage, and at one point, it appears that a struggle breaks out between two people, possibly Mary and Lee. Mary's car was recovered at the scene along with her purse. They also found a fake nail in an open parking spot where the struggle took place. When Lee was arrested for his other crimes, his truck, which now belonged to a construction worker, was tracked down and searched for DNA evidence, but they came up empty-handed. As police were preparing to interview Lee about Mary's disappearance, he passed away from natural causes, leaving Mary's whereabouts and circumstances of her disappearance to likely remain an unsolved mystery forever. The case of Matthew Flores and his untimely demise is one of Santa Clara County's most disturbing unsolved mysteries. On the 24th of March, 1994, 24-year-old Matt was an engineer at Applied Materials. He had only started his new job 9 days earlier, and on this day he arrived at work pulling into the business's parking lot in his rented white Chevy Corsica at around 8:12 a.m. There were around 20 other people in the parking lot at the time, which makes the case much more frustrating, as they'd been unable to provide police with any helpful information. As Matt got out of his car to head into the building, he was attacked by an unknown assailant who used a firearm to end his life. Upon interviewing his friends and family, police learned that Matt was well-liked and had no enemies, and they were at a loss as to why someone would want to end his life. When CCTV footage was checked, it was found that the crime was carried out in a blind spot, not covered by the cameras, but police were able to get one lead from the recordings. 20 minutes before Matt arrives, a two-door Ford Explorer can be seen entering the parking lot. A few minutes later, a vehicle similar to Matt's can be seen driving by, followed by the Explorer. 3 minutes before the incident, the Explorer can be seen entering the lot again and heading for the area where the crime was committed. Matt is then seen arriving, and about 20 seconds after Matt's life is ended, the vehicle is seen leaving the area, never to be seen again. From what they saw on the footage, police believe that the driver of the Explorer was stalking Matt that morning, and that they may have been the victim of mistaken identity. They believe that the perpetrator had intended to attack someone driving a similar car to Matt's, and that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Despite all of this footage and the fact that there were so many people in the vicinity of the attack, Matt's case remains unsolved. A $100,000 reward has been offered to anyone who comes forward with information on the missing truck, or who may have seen something that morning. Anyone with information is urged to contact Scott Harold at 408-275-0917. On the 24th of April, 2021, Jung Mean, a medical student from Korea, was visiting Han River Park with a friend, who has only been identified by investigators as Friend A. During their time at the park, the men had something to eat and had a few drinks together. Following their meal, it's believed that both men fell asleep in the park. At around 4:30 a.m. the following morning, a friend claims to have woken up to find that Son was no longer there. He says that he searched for him, but to no avail, and that Son was ultimately reported as a missing person. 5 days later, Son was located deceased in the Juan River. At first, investigators believed that the case was accidental, but then details began to emerge, suggesting that everything was not as it seemed. Initial suspicions came about after it was found that Son had sustained trauma to his head. They then learned that friend A had returned home after the incident while in possession of Son's cell phone. He claimed that he was only using it as his was broken, and police were able to confirm this. But they then learned that the friend had thrown the shoes that he was wearing during the night away. They were baffled as to why the friend phoned his parents upon learning that Son was missing as well, rather than contacting the police. Upon receiving the news, the friend's parents traveled to Han River Park to help search for his friend. When they couldn't locate him, the friend's parents decided to call Son's parents and inform them that he was missing. Suspicions then grew further when neither friend A nor his parents attended Son's funeral, and many people suspected that he was hiding something and that he had a hand in his friend's demise. The two men were seen earlier in the evening on CCTV cameras inside a convenience store, where friend A can be seen wearing the shoes in question. They are then seen in the spot where they had their meal. When the friend is seen later in footage, his shirt seems to have been stretched out and his shoes seem wet, leading many people to believe that he is indeed being untruthful about what had happened and that he had been in the water with Son at some point during the night. This goes against his first statement, in which he claims he woke up alone and had no idea where Son had gone. Despite all of these discrepancies in his story, friend A has not been investigated by police, and a national petition has been set up, prompting them to do so. But for now, Jung Mean's last movements remain an unsolved mystery, and only time will tell if investigators will be able to crack the strange case. The mystery of Peter Bergman is one of the strangest unsolved cases that's not been resolved. The tall man with a German or Austrian accent seemed to have disappeared from nowhere and left behind no evidence that could tell investigators who he really was. The man who had become known as Peter Bergman first appeared at the Derry bus station on June 12, 2009. He wanted to go to Sligo, a quiet town on Ireland's west coast, known for its beaches and its connection to the poet W.B. Yeats. It's not a popular tourist destination when compared to other seaside towns in Ireland, but Peter asked for Sligo specifically. He next appeared on CCTV at the Sligo bus station later that afternoon. He went to the taxi rank and asked to be taken to somewhere cheap to stay. He didn't have a specific hotel in mind and ended up at the Sligo City Hotel. There, he checked in for 3 nights and gave his name as Peter Bergman. He wasn't asked for his ID, but did give an address in Vienna. Over the next 3 days, the hotel staff didn't notice anything out of the ordinary about Peter. He kept to himself and came and went regularly. It was only when they looked back that they realized his trips were more mysterious than they seemed. In the 3 days he had stayed at the hotel, he came and went 13 times. Each time, he took with him a purple bag filled with something, but when he returned, those things were missing. The CCTV footage from the hotel showed him coming and leaving, but it was only the CCTV footage that would capture Peter. The town had plenty of CCTV in public areas, but none caught Peter on any of these trips, and where he disposed of these objects is a mystery. Even stranger, he was seen around the town a few times, but nobody saw him dumping the objects he took with him. On Peter's second day in Sligo, he visited a post office where he purchased 10 82-cent stamps and airmail stickers. These stamps would have allowed him to send letters abroad, but there's no evidence that he sent any letters. If he did, it wasn't caught on CCTV. The following day, Peter asked a taxi driver to take him to Strand Hill as he wanted to go swimming. The taxi driver informed him that this beach was most commonly used for surfing and suggested Ross's Point instead. Peter agreed and the taxi driver took him there, but when they arrived, Peter looked at the beach and then asked to be taken back to the bus station. The next day was June 15th, the last day of Peter's life, which was as mysterious as everything else we know about it. He requested a late checkout and left the hotel at about 1 p.m. He took with him 3 bags that he had arrived with, but by the time he arrived at the bus station, one of them was missing, and it would never be recovered. At 2:40 p.m., Peter took the bus to Ross's Point. It was a relatively warm day and there were lots of beachgoers, and Peter stood out. He was wearing a long-sleeved blue shirt, a black sleeveless jumper, dark pants, and a black leather jacket. He didn't seem like he was going out to enjoy a day at the beach, but many people saw him walking up and down along the sand. At one point, he took off his shoes and socks and rolled up his pants. Peter stayed well into the evening, even as most of the other visitors left. He was seen wearing his glasses and sitting on a bench. The final sighting of Peter Bergman was at 11:50 p.m., when a woman spotted him walking along the water's edge with his purple plastic bag. The following morning, 2 men training for a triathlon stumbled across Peter's body. He was dressed very strangely. He wore purple striped swimming pants with his underwear over the top and a navy t-shirt tucked into them. Most of the clothes he had been wearing the day before were found neatly folded on the rocks nearby, but the shirt was never recovered. All the clothes Peter was wearing had their labels carefully cut out. No identification of any kind was located. There were no clues that could explain why he had come to Sligo. What belongings were found could be traced to the continent, and it's believed he came from either Germany or Austria. The address he had given the hotel was false, and it was likely his name was false too. There was no record of a Peter Bergman entering Ireland or the UK, and how he came to be in Derry is a mystery. Theories about this strange case range from him being a spy of some kind, to an ordinary man drawn to Sligo for some unknown reason, and choosing to pass away peacefully here. Peter's DNA is on file, but so far there have been no matches. It's likely that only when a family member comes forward that this mysterious case will be solved. When most people think of the island of Lanzarote, they think of idyllic beaches and popular clubs and bars. It's become one of the most popular vacation destinations, and has a reputation that matches them. For most people visiting the island, crime is far from their thoughts. If anybody were to think of crimes, it would likely be pickpocketing or other theft. The island, like most of the Canary Islands, does have a very low crime rate, but there are some exceptions to that. Both tourists and locals have experienced violent crimes on the island, and there are a disturbing number of incidents where nights out have ended in tragedy. For the family and friends of Gary Shearer, Lanzarote quickly transformed from the vacation hotspot to the scene of tragedy when he went missing in March of this year. Gary was 53 years old from Scotland, but he had decided to travel to the Spanish islands for a solo St. Patrick's Day trip. He booked a room in Puerto del Carmen, one of the most popular towns in Lanzarote, and he was set to stay for a week. On March 16th, Gary arrived at the hotel and checked in without incident. That evening, he headed to the popular Bar 67, an Irish bar just a 9-minute walk away from his hotel. He only took with him about £70 and left the rest of his money as well as his ID and medication. Only a few details about what happened that night have been released to the public. According to authorities, he was seen partying with a group of 6 people at the bar. Whether he knew these people beforehand, met them at the hotel, or at the bar itself isn't known. At some point around 12:30 a.m. the following morning, Gary was seen outside the bar. Another tourist would later come forward and describe Gary as being very drunk. The tourist tried to get Gary into a taxi to take him back to the hotel where he was staying, but the taxi driver refused him. Gary left on his own and wouldn't be seen again. The same tourist went back to the hotel the following day to ask for Gary, only to find that he hadn't made it back to the hotel. It wouldn't be until Gary failed to check in for his flight back to Scotland at the end of the week that anybody realized he was missing. Gary's family contacted the police in Scotland, who then began working with the local police to try to crack the case. Thankfully, in this case, Gary's family were able to travel to Lanzarote and began searching for him. But unfortunately, so far that hasn't led to Gary being discovered. Early in the investigation, CCTV was found that placed Gary near the bar sometime between 12:30 a.m. and 1:30. He was unconscious in the doorway of a nearby store. Of course, Gary was no longer there by the time anybody realized he was missing. Several people had walked past him as he lay on the street, but nobody seemed concerned enough to check on him. This CCTV caused some confusion for people following the story, as it wasn't revealed if police knew how Gary left that spot. But because the case was being managed by the Spanish courts, only limited information was revealed. This was normal for a missing person operation. It was eventually revealed that Gary had woken up himself and walked away from this resting spot. More CCTV was later discovered, with some images being released to the public. Gary had been captured on CCTV at a Spar supermarket. Which store this was isn't clear, but the closest to where he was last seen would have meant that he likely walked past the hotel where he was staying. According to family, he was seen walking towards San Antonio, which likely would have been back the way that he had previously come. What makes his CCTV footage so mysterious is that Gary wasn't alone. He was seen walking with a mysterious individual that police wanted to talk to. This unidentified man is described as being between 60 and 70 years of age, well-built and with gray hair. He was wearing a light brown jacket, white shirt, and dark pants. The man may have had nothing to do with Gary's disappearance, but he's currently the last person known to have seen him before he vanished without a trace. Gary has epilepsy and diabetes. His chance of survival without his medication is not great, making his family extremely worried. Anyone with information on this case is asked to contact the local police or call 077-220-94907 or 073-052-436-618. When Peter Akerman was last seen, it was in CCTV images from a grocery store. In the images, he seemed to be acting normally and was buying the groceries that he had told his wife he was going out to get. But after Peter left the store, something strange happened, and he hasn't been seen since. It was July 24th, 2009, when Peter vanished without a trace. He was 82 years old when he disappeared and walked with a cane. Other than that, he was physically and mentally fit, according to his family. He lived with his wife on their farm in Leader, Minnesota. Two of their children also had homes on the property, and Peter would regularly see his other children. Despite his age, he liked to keep himself busy and would often drive into nearby Staples to run errands in the morning before coming home for a nap or to play cards in the afternoon. July 24th was the day before Peter's granddaughter's wedding, and there was still work to do before the big day. In particular, he needed to drop off a check for the catering service. At around midday, Peter headed out in his light blue 1995 Chevrolet Caprice to drop off the check. He also intended to stop at a store and purchase some bananas and bread before picking up his wife's medication. His wife, Delane, stayed home. She figured he wouldn't be long, and she was baking, so she couldn't just leave the house. When Peter wasn't back by 3, Delane began to worry. She contacted family members, thinking he must have gone to visit them. It wasn't like Peter to not just come straight home, but this seemed like the most reasonable explanation. Nobody had seen him, though. The search for Peter began. CCTV footage from the store that Peter had visited was found. There was also a sighting of him and his car on Warner Road near the Crow Wing River Bridge, sometime between noon and 1 p.m. This wasn't out of place, and it would have been a typical part of Peter's route home from the store. The next day, a friend of one of Peter's sons found the car. It was on a low-maintenance road just off Cass County Road 32, and seemed to be stuck in the mud. The window was rolled down slightly and the groceries were still inside. There was no sign of Peter, though. At first, the police didn't believe any crime had taken place and thought Peter had wandered into the nearby woods for some reason. A helicopter with an infrared camera was used to try to find any trace of someone in the woods, but nothing was picked up. Peter's family and friends also searched the woods but found no trace of the missing man. Peter's family did not believe he had left the car where it was. There was no reason for him to come this way. He knew the roads well, and it seemed unlikely that he'd gotten lost, but even if that was the case, there were no signs that Peter himself had left the car there. If Peter had gotten stuck in the mud, his family claimed he would have tried to get out, which would have left mud sprayed onto the back of the car, but this wasn't the case. Unfortunately, as the disappearance was treated as a crime at first, any evidence that was left behind on the vehicle was destroyed. No fingerprints were taken. The ground around the car was kept clear, so there were no footprints identified. It wasn't even clear if a struggle had taken place here. Peter's family believed the car was dumped at this location, and whatever had happened to Peter had happened further away. If anybody wanted to harm Peter, it was likely he was the victim of a random attack. According to his family, he had no known enemies, and there was nobody they could think of that might have wanted to harm him. One theory is that Peter stopped to help someone at the bridge, which wouldn't have been out of character for him. That person may have then attacked Peter for some unknown reason and tried to cover up their crime. Theft might have been the motive in the case, but Peter only had $30 with him when he vanished. The only evidence that foul play was involved is the lack of evidence for anything else. If Peter had a medical emergency of some kind, his body would have been found by now. His bank account hasn't been touched since the disappearance, and nothing in his private life indicated that he wanted to run away. For now, the case remains unsolved, and anybody with information can contact the Cass County Sheriff's Office at 800-450-2677 or Crime Stoppers of Minnesota at 800-222-8477. Early on December 4th, 2003, employees at a drilling company found the body of attorney Jonathan Luna in a creek in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. How he got there has been covered by CCTV in various transactions, but why remains a mystery. Jonathan worked in Baltimore, where he had helped to convict criminals on a variety of charges. The night before his body was found, he was working on plea deals in the case of two men who dealt illegal substances. He worked past 6 p.m., made a brief visit home, and was back in the office by 9 p.m. He spoke to the lawyer of one of the men and left a voicemail for another. In both cases, he told them he was working on the plea deal, but would fax it to them by midnight, but that fax never came. The following morning, staff at the courthouse found Jonathan's glasses and cell phone in his office, but Jonathan and his car were both absent. When Jonathan didn't show up, he was reported missing. Not long after, the body found in Lancaster County was identified as him. Jonathan was found beneath his car, which was partway into a creek. He had suffered many wounds from a bladed weapon, though most were shallow. Some were to his back, and there were reports that some were also defensive wounds, but it's not clear if this was actually the case. After the attack, he had collapsed in the creek, which was the actual cause for his passing. Police believed he may have been responsible for the attack himself, while the coroner believed that someone else had attacked him. As police investigated the case, they looked at how Jonathan had gone from Baltimore to Lancaster County. It had been a roundabout journey which began at 11:38 p.m. the night before when he left the courthouse. An hour later, he was in Delaware, where he took out $200 from an ATM. According to a CNN report from days after the incident, CCTV images from the ATM showed that Jonathan was alone, and he was still wearing his tie. Other sources say CCTV wasn't available here. He next headed into Pennsylvania, and his debit card was used at a gas station in Philadelphia. The grainy CCTV footage here wasn't much use for investigators, though they did believe that there wasn't a car that was following Jonathan's. The staff also said that he had been alone. The journey Jonathan went on is unclear, going back and forth on toll roads. These roads were ones that Jonathan had already had a pass for, but at one point he purchased a ticket. When he handed the ticket back in at the Reading Lancaster interchange, there were red stains on it, so he was already injured at this point. This occurred at about 4 a.m. and was the last known sighting of Jonathan. His body would be found an hour and a half later. According to locals, Jonathan, or whoever had brought him to that spot, likely would have known about the creek beforehand. It wasn't the sort of place that someone would stumble across, but his family could think of no reason why he would have been in the area in the first place. But there are many theories surrounding this case. During the investigation, police found that Jonathan had significant money problems. He'd managed to keep his credit card debts hidden, even from his wife. But not long before the incident, Jonathan had come into some unexpected money. Around the same time, a large amount of money disappeared from evidence. John was one of the suspects in that disappearance, though there wasn't any actual evidence that he was behind it. Police theorized that he was worried he was going to be found out and had taken his own life. The investigation also turned up an account on a dating website for discreet hookups that used Jonathan's name. The account had been used years earlier, but some theorized that Jonathan had gone to this location to hook up with someone. Others believed that his job led to his strange passing. He had helped to lock up countless dangerous individuals, and it was possible someone connected to them could have been out for revenge. That wouldn't explain why Jonathan had set out on his road trips, but there doesn't appear to be an explanation that would explain everything that happened that night. The final days of Jack Wheeler's life were full of mystery and confusion. Even though CCTV cameras captured large parts of that crime, it doesn't make what happened to him any clearer. Jack Wheeler was a 66-year-old Vietnam War veteran and ex-presidential aide when he passed away. He had achieved a lot in his life, including working on a variety of projects to help other veterans and serving as CEO of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. After serving as a presidential aide for Ronald Reagan and both Bush presidents, he began working as a consultant for a defense contractor. That firm focused on cybersecurity, and that was where Jack's attention was in the final years of his life. He had a high clearance level, which many suspected might have had something to do with what happened next. On Christmas Eve of 2010, Jack traveled from Washington, D.C., where he worked, to New York, where he and his family lived. He spent Christmas Day with his wife and their children, and everything seemed to be normal. But the next day, he told his wife Catherine that he was going back to Washington early. He told her that it was important, but not why. This caused an argument which carried on over text messages and emails after Jack left New York. On December 28th, Jack arrived back in Washington and worked in his office for a few hours before heading to Newcastle, Delaware. There, the family had a house on the edge of Battery Park, which John adored. He saw the area as historically important, as the area had once been used as a defense battery during the Revolutionary War. It was after this point that Jack began acting strange. He stopped using his cell phone at 9:30 a.m. the next day, and he called his work to tell them that there had been a break-in at his home. Some important items such as his briefcase, key fob, and cell phone had been stolen. What kind of important information may have been contained in that briefcase is unknown, but his security credentials were stored there. He also contacted his therapist via email to say that he was feeling dazed after the fight with his wife. At 6 p.m., CCTV footage showed Jack at a pharmacy, where he asked a friend who worked there for a lift to nearby Wilmington. The friend offered to call him a taxi, but Jack refused. Another couple then offered him a lift. Jack's friend noted that he looked upset at this point, but wasn't acting too strangely. When he was next caught on camera, a little over 40 minutes later, that had drastically changed. The next CCTV footage was from a parking garage in Wilmington. He looked disoriented, was limping, and holding one shoe in his hand. His tie was missing, and he wasn't wearing a coat, just his suit jacket, which was strange given how cold it was. Security footage showed him peeking around corners and looking through doors as if he was trying to hide from someone. He told staff he was looking for his car and that he had lost his briefcase. His parking ticket was in the briefcase. Jack's car wasn't at that garage, but one 3 blocks away. This alone wasn't too weird to Jack's friends and family. It wasn't uncommon for him to lose his car and have to take taxis home because he couldn't remember where he parked, but everything else about the incident was very strange. The next day, he was seen on CCTV multiple times in Wilmington. He was even more disheveled, and many mistook him as a homeless person. At one point, he asked to see a managing partner of a law firm, but left before he could be seen. He also asked for a lift to Philadelphia. His last known sighting was at about 8:40 p.m. He was now wearing a dark blue hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled over his face. He walked east towards Rodney Square and disappeared. The next time Jack was seen was when his body fell out of a garbage truck at a landfill on New Year's Eve. Police were able to determine that he'd been in a commercial dumpster in the city of Newark that he'd picked up at about 4:30 that morning. He had wounds sustained from blunt force, and police believe this wasn't an accident. Someone had deliberately taken Jack's life. At first, it looked as if someone was after him in the days before he vanished. It seemed like he was trying to avoid taking a taxi and was trying to get out of Delaware. But Jack did have bipolar disorder, and it's possible he was having an episode or some other mental health problem the day he vanished, making him paranoid. The fact he had lost his phone would only make things worse, but it likely wasn't stolen. Jack's phone was located at a house that was under construction, opposite his Battery Park home. He had problems with the house and was campaigning to have its building halted. He saw it as sacrilege, as it was being built on historically important land. On December 27th, Jack's first night back in Delaware, police were called after some smoke devices were set off in his house. It didn't cause much damage, but could have been a lot worse. There's nothing to say for certain that Jack was behind this, though he had spoken about doing something similar. The fact that his phone was found here led investigators to believe he was responsible, though. When he realized he left his phone at the crime scene, things began to spiral for him, leading to the strange behavior in the following days. That still wouldn't explain why he was attacked, though. While some believe Jack may have sustained the injuries simply by falling from the dumpster, others believe they had been caused deliberately. Whether this was just a crime of opportunity or if someone had deliberately targeted Jack remains a mystery. Anyone with information on this case can contact the Delaware Crime Stoppers at 1-800-847-3333. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next